spend hours playing Fortnite, but you can't break the barrier of placing well or earning in competitive. But what is the reason? Is it your builds, your game awareness, your strategy? With competitive always evolving and your skill level having to improve, players are often making simple mistakes that are holding them back from good placements and becoming a pro. The end goal for competitive players is by winning major tournaments like FNCS and Globals. So how do we get there? Alright, first off, let's talk about how to stop wasting time while you're in a match. One of the biggest mistakes I see is players spending way too much time on things that don't matter in the grand scheme of the game, like looting a chest in a POI, getting caught in low effort fights, or overthinking rotations. Look, I get it, you want to max out your loot and make sure you're prepared for any situation, but if you spend too much time looting early game, you're missing out on the opportunity to set yourself up for success later on. Here's the rule, focus on essentials, a solid AR, shotgun, and mobility item. If you find a ton of shields or meds, awesome. But don't waste 5 minutes looting a building that's already been picked clean. The key here is efficiency. You don't need to hit every single chest. Instead, know where the higher value loot spots are and make sure you are only going for the essentials. The quicker you loot, the quicker you can start getting yourself setting up for rotations and controlling the pace of the game. Next up, rotating. One of the most common mistakes I see is players getting stuck rotating too late or overthinking their routes. Here's the thing, you need to rotate efficiently and smart. Don't wait until the zone's about to close to start moving. You're asking for the problem sitting on the congested side, especially while you're playing in set lobbies or just high level competitive Fortnite. If you want to be in a good spot, center zone spot for mid game and avoid the chaos, always try to rotate early. Know your exit routes as soon as you land and have your game plan set out for the game and try to predict where the fights are going to happen. Alright, the next big mistake, being greedy. Now there's so many situations to apply this to, but one situation I see all the time, especially in high stress situations. Imagine this, right? You're in the middle of a fight and instead of fully protecting yourself with a full metal box with space, you're just slapping down a couple walls and hoping for the best. This is greed in action. In this situation, you're trying to take the fight too quickly, trying to get the kill before your opponent can even react. And when you're sacrificing your defense in the process, it will most likely get you killed. Here's the fix, build for control, not just speed. When you're in a fight, take the time to create a solid defense box. Don't just slap down a wall and go for the quick peek. Build yourself a box, edit out, and make space. Build with purpose. Sure, it's tempting to rush your opponent for the quick kill, but if you're getting greedy and underbuild, you're giving them such an easy opportunity to punish you and take over the fight, which will lead to them having the advantage over you and giving them a higher chance of killing you. Next up, greeding for loot. This is another killer mistake. You're looting, everything's going well, but you get a little too greedy. You hear a chest in the distance or you spot a free refresh outside your box endgame. You think, I can grab that, I'll be fine. But in reality, you're wasting precious time and your opponents are already making moves and analyzing your next move ready to kill you. Here's the fix, loot with intention. When you're in a fight or in a rotation, don't get distracted by the loot that's outside your immediate need. Focus on the essentials, mats, shields, and mobility. If you've got a good loadout already, don't go chasing after the extra loot unless it's a game changer or win condition. Even then, if it's in a situation where it's impossible to get or someone that will end up getting you lobby sprayed, don't even bother. Focus on what you have and look for a refresh where you have more control over getting. Prioritize your positioning and timing. Don't get greedy and sacrifice your safety for loot you don't even need. Now let's talk about greed for kills. This is a big one, especially for players who are trying to climb the ranks and get into the tournament scene. You've got a player on low health, and it's so tempting to chase them down for that easy kill. But here's the thing, if you're being greedy, you're probably overextending and putting yourself in a bad position. Chasing kills, especially when you're not even in a strong position, it's often a huge mistake. If you're too greedy, you're going to get third party, or worse, you're going to leave yourself open for someone to take a shot and kill you. Key here is patience. Don't get greedy for the kill, focus on controlling the game. If the fight's not in your favor or you're out of mats, don't chase it. Wait for the right moment, or better yet, let them fight someone else while you rotate to a safer position. Let me give you a quick tip. Don't always go for the kill. Sometimes the best play is to just take a step back and regroup. If you're low on health, low on mats, or just in a bad spot, don't force the fight. Let the greedy players burn themselves out and focus on your positioning. The more you practice this, the more you will realize that surviving and staying in the game is way more important than a quick kill. The mistake I see a lot of players making when it comes to movement is not using their sprint properly during rotations. You're in the middle of a rotation, you're heading to the next zone, and for some reason, you have no regen in your sprint. If you're not using your sprint properly, you're losing time. Simple as that. You're leaving yourself vulnerable to a bad positioning and timing, and you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Here's the fix, always sprint when you're rotating. But Minsu, I always have sprint, it just runs out so quick. Because you're making a crucial mistake. Most players don't actually understand how to use sprint properly, and I'm going to show you right now how to do so. Now, the biggest mistake I see is people jumping while they're sprinting. This is a huge mistake and a fundamental mistake in hindsight. Now, understand why you want to jump is because you don't want to get headshot sniped, you don't want to get tagged as much, and your target is hard to hit. But in hindsight, this is actually not worth it in the long run, as you're going to be slow on your rotations, and it's just not going to be good for you in the long run. Now, here's the fix that I'm going to be telling you guys how to fix this situation. Now, the way you're going to fix this is as you're sprinting, you want to slide, and if this is up terrain or down terrain, doesn't matter, but it's going to make the longevity of your sprint better and nicer, which is going to lead you to making your rotations quicker and putting yourself in a better position. Now, you can do this while building the player off, whatnot. It's just going to make your sprint a lot nicer and smoother as you go ahead, and you're not putting yourself in that position where you're jumping and losing all your sprint and end up just bot movement like this. Alright, let's talk about zones. If you don't understand how zones work, you're at a huge disadvantage, especially in competitive play. You've probably heard the phrase zone awareness thrown around a lot, but here's actually what it means. Understanding not where the zone is, but how it's going to behave throughout the match. Whether you're in a tournament or playing scrims, this is something you cannot afford to ignore. Here's the mistake I see a lot of players making. They either don't rotate early enough or they rotate too late and find themselves trapped in a filler position. Zones aren't random, they follow a pattern. In most competitive formats, the first few zones will relatively be safe to rotate through. But by the time the mid game hits, you're going to be needing to plan your rotations ahead of time. One key thing to remember, early rotations are crucial, especially after the second zone closes. If you wait until the last minute, you're risking getting caught in a bad spot or being held by others. Mid game, you want to make sure you're in a position to be able to get storm surge and then focus on putting yourself in a good position for the next zone. Make sure you are thinking ahead. If you are rotating from zone to the next, always plan ahead and aim for the areas with natural cover, or as I should say, line of sight. Things like hills, trees, or structures. This makes it harder for players to take advantage of you and hold you while you're rotating and not get easily caught off guard. So the key takeaway here is, never wait too long to rotate. If you know where the zone's going, plan your rotate early so you're not stuck in a filler position. The best players are always one step ahead when it comes to zones. Now, let's talk about something that trips a lot of players up in competitive. Storm Surge. If you've ever found yourself suddenly taking damage in a tournament or high level lobby, and you're like, wait, why am I losing health? That's Storm Surge in action. Storm Surge is a mechanic that punishes players who aren't dealing enough damage to players by a certain point of the match. In tournaments, this usually kicks in when there's a certain number of players still alive in the zone. What a lot of players don't realize is that Storm Surge can be avoided by keeping track of your damage output and staying active within a fight. If you're just hiding in a box, not engaging with anyone, you might get tagged for Storm Surge, and that's the fastest ticket to disaster. So here's the fix. Always keep track of Storm Surge and deal damage to other players when you can. Whether it's taking a few shots from the distance with an AR or getting involved with a fight, or pressuring players in a build fight. Always stay involved and keep your damage up. Also, don't just focus on the surge when it's about to hit. Monitor the player count and zone timings and try to get damage in early so you're not getting caught off guard when Storm Surge starts ticking. Storm Surge isn't something you can ignore. Be proactive and make sure you're not just hiding the whole match. Stay active and do your part to avoid that damage ticking down. Alright, the last thing we need to talk about is remembering loot locations. Competitive Fortnite isn't about fast mechanics and good aim. It's also about knowing the map and being able to grab loot quickly, efficiently, and in the right places. A lot of players don't realize that the importance of remembering loot spots. It's not just about where you land, but it's also knowing where loot can be found as you rotate. You've got to remember where loot is across the map. If you're in a pinch and you need to grab something to replenish your heals, shields, or even just some better guns, knowing where you can find all loot or familiar POIs is huge. Don't just rely on the initial loot from where you land. Keep mental notes of chests, ammo crates, and supply drops where you can get along your rotations. Here's a little pro tip. Always be aware of where other players might have dropped. If you know a spot that's being cleared, don't waste time trying to loot there. Instead, aim for something in areas that you know are going to be more likely to be untouched. Alright, next big mistake. Overpeaking and peaks. So first, let's talk about what overpeaking actually is. If you don't know, overpeaking happens when you peek from behind your builds too far, leaving yourself vulnerable to shots from your opponent. This is something that happens to a lot of players, especially in high pressure situations. They tend to get eager or take shots and end up paying for it. Here's an example. As you can see, I just peeked too aggressively and left myself wide open. When you do this, you're basically asking for your opponent to hit you, and trust me, they'll almost take that shot every time. So here's the fix. Don't peek too far. It's super important to use your builds and protect your body and only expose your head or a small portion of your character. The key here is to peek just enough to be able to get shot, but not too much. that you leave yourself exposed to getting hit. One of the best ways to fix overpeaking is actually by using right hand peaks. This is when you edit your wall in a way that exposes your right side to the enemy, allowing you to shoot while staying out of their line of sight. Right hand peaks are one of the most important techniques to master in Fortnite, especially when it comes to avoiding damage while you take shots. Here's the fix: always to look to make small edits to expose your right side. With the right hand peak, you're using the structure itself to cover your body, giving the opponent a hard time to figure out where you are and where their crosshair should be sitting. This gives you a huge advantage because your opponent will have a much harder time landing shots on you when they can't even see your full body. Let me break it down. When you peek with your left side, you're exposing your body and it's way easier for your opponent to land shots. With a right hand peek, your opponent can't see most of your body, which gives you the huge advantage. And the best part? You can take your shots, then quickly reset your build and get back to safety. It's all about efficiency and protecting yourself. Another thing I see a lot of players doing is peeking for too long. They'll stick their head out and take one shot, but then stay exposed for way too long, hoping for a second or even a third shot. This is a dangerous and a major mistake. Take your shot, then dip, get back to cover and reset. Don't give your opponent the chance to line up a shot on you and take control of the fight. Another great way to avoid overpeaking is by using window or cone edits. These can help you peek through your builds while exposing a small amount of your character, and with the right timing you can get a quick shot off without even risking too much damage in return. Check this out: with a window edit I can see my opponent and take the shot without putting my whole body out there. The more you practice this, the better you'll get at controlling your angles and exposing what you only need to. And this is where the right timing becomes critical. If you follow these principles, you'll drastically improve your chances of winning fights and staying safe while applying pressure to your opponent. The key to winning more 1v1s and build fights is making sure you're not being too reckless with your peaks. Smart, calculated moves will always win out over aggressive, overzealous ones. These mistakes are just a few common errors that are holding players back from making earnings. Stay tuned for the next video where we give a deeper dive into more strategies on how to improve your gameplay and take your competitive career to the next level. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember to tag me in your videos when you're using these strats.